Hi, everybody. I'm Valerie Gotcher, the founder and executive director at BIND, the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. Thanks for joining us this year for Synapse Labs. We have a wellness tip ready for you from our member, Chris. So I'd like to introduce you to him. And Chris, will you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a member at BIND?
Yeah, I had a stroke in February of 2000. I'm thinking about it, 15. And at the rehab I went to, I remember their caseworker mentioned Bind, and I didn't know anything about it. And then she described several people at Bind who had later figured out right away that one was like Jim Goodman, based on their history, and then one was Kevin McIntyre because they said, oh, there's one guy that was a bull rider, and there's one guy that's had multiple heart attacks, and I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting, And then I found out that Bind was right by my house, so I went there, and wasn't as big as it was now at all. Wasn't even close. Everybody was so nice, and everybody had, like I said, common experiences, but different backgrounds, which was so neat to see, because you could bounce things off of them. You could ask, what happened to you? Like everyone has a different stroke story too, just like how it happened, how they came about finding Bind. And everyone really, uses that group differently too. It affects them differently. And I mean, it's great. I really enjoyed that.
So curiosity brought you, and then somehow we convinced you that you needed to stick around for a while.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, yeah, because getting into the whole presentation part of this with socialization, that was a huge issue, because for the most part, when people have a stroke or if they're homebound, it's really hard to get out of the house. You become an introvert, even though you might be an extrovert. And that really, as long as transportation is not an issue and you can get there, to different therapies or different support groups, it's such an easy way for a forced friendship or a forced social situation. Because the more you read up on, the health of your brain, a big factor of that is, other than, diet, exercise, and, like intellectual stimulation, is social circles and social relationships. So, it's becoming pretty apparent lately if you look at like a lot of concerns around the quarantine, because people are not socializing.
Right.
And it really messes with people's, mental facilities, just because, psychologically it's very difficult. And so we run into a lot of Bind members that, sometimes they come in and then they hang out for a while and then they don't, and then they come, and most of the injured people, the fellow brain injury people, know what's going on with them. Sometimes it's just hard to get you out of the house, and that part, it's so difficult.
But so important.
Very.
Yeah. So I'm going to share the screen, and you've already touched on a lot of these points as far as how socialization relates to and is important for people who've had a brain injury. But socialization and, of course, mental health is important for all of us. So what advice do you have to share for our viewers today?
Yeah, like the first bullet there, that find your niche. Everybody, obviously, family would be the first one, but the difficult part with anybody is, your family, your friends, any classmates or coworkers. Some people aren't working anymore. Some people can't work anymore. Some people, go back to work, and people see them differently. It's similar to someone, losing a leg or having a chronic ailment, or they're terminally ill or something. It's very difficult for other people to get that out of their mind that you're still the same person. You know, you might act differently, you might not be able to do certain things, but you know, it's easy for, you know, for people to understand that, you know, when it happens to them, sometimes they want to socialize, sometimes they don't. So like, so I'd say like finding your niche, I'd say, you know, look to your family, your church, any support groups like Bind or like stroke groups. Those are the best areas because people have been through what you've been through, and they
Mm-hmm.
can give you ideas on, you know, how do you do this? How do you, you know, my hand doesn't work. Any exercises, you know, you can recommend. And another one, you know, if you're old enough and you're living in a major city, there's a lot of senior centers that are either free or like $10, $20 a year. And they have all the facilities like gyms or, and, you know, in a senior center, especially I live in Plano, you know, the diversity is unbelievable. You know, there's every nationality, every race, every, you know, and everyone's so open because they've been through life. You know, they have, you know, they're there really just to meet people and to socialize. You know, I just, you know, you can't emphasize that enough. You know, it's like, I'm a big one. If I'm in line, you know, I want to talk to people, you know, like for waiting, you know, cause I'm like, I've had so many opportunities and my children have, based on finding somebody in a line and just talking to them, finding common, you know, experiences or interests.
We're more alike than what we realize sometimes, huh?
Oh, without a doubt. Like any, you know, I always think like, you know, again, depending on how extroverted you are, if you're on a plane, you say it's like a 2-hour flight or something, and you don't know anything about the person that was next to you, I feel like that was kind of a waste. You know,
A
because
missed opportunity, perhaps.
yes, it definitely is. You know, it's not a, you know, an elevator pitch where it's, you know, 5 seconds. You know, like a, you know, yeah, it's kind of interesting though. But
Yeah.
that's why, you know, I've always, when I was researching or when I went to some presentations on dementia, because that's, you know, that's always a concern for a lot of brain injured. And that was the one that always struck me that's the strangest because the social, you know, expanding and keeping your social circle is almost harder than, you know, eating better or even exercising, you know, if you have certain abilities. But boy, you know, like I said, it's everyone I've talked to, it's said it's really hard to, you don't want to be staying in your house, but at the same time, there's something pulling you back from going outside. And
Okay.
that part, I can never figure that out. You know, like,
So you mentioned dementia and how socialization is important to both live longer and have better brain health. So
oh,
is that something that's actually out there in the research that you've
oh yeah.
seen?
Well, you know, that's the thing. Live longer. There's really nothing that they can say this will really help you live longer. You know, but if you look at any like researcher or expert on dementia, that is the biggest one where, you know, there's only a list of, you know, the highlight list. That's one of them of like 5 things or so. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
staying active, eating, sleeping is huge, um, and keeping your social circles because, you know, the older you get too, the more likely, if you're at home, the more likely you are to stay at home.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well,
you know,
thank you. You have some really, really valid points. Is there anything that you want to cover that you haven't touched on yet?
you know, the only one I can think of is a fellow stroke stroke friend. I'm trying to think. I usually call her a stroke friend, I guess. But they mentioned to me to join a gym, and I did maybe like after a year and a half after my stroke, and that helped me so much because people would see me and recognize me all the time. But the toughest part for that, and this is very similar to going to the grocery store or anything, you know, they had to like tie a weight onto my hand because my hand didn't work and my right side didn't work. But if you can get out of, you know, that mindset, that, that vanity, I guess, you quickly get out of the mindset that it's not okay, or that it's, that you're not having difficulties by going outside. And I mean, it's like anybody, like the first time I had to use a shopping cart, like a little stroller. Oh, I felt horrible because I'm
Mm.
pretty young, and I was like, what the heck? But it was a godsend using it. So it
Yeah.
got me outside. It got me out of the house. I get to see people. So that's
Well,
awesome.
we've been really blessed to have you as a member and have you as being part of the Bind program, and you've definitely kind of risen to the challenge of being a mentor and a supporter for others as they've joined the program. You mentioned how we've grown through the years that you've been involved with us. So we appreciate you for filming this with us today and continuing to carry the torch for our Bind members. And thank you.
Thank you.